In a narcissistic dysfunctional family system, children will be assigned roles. This is because you cannot be an individual in this dysfunctional family system, so children will not be allowed to be autonomous beings. This is because narcissistic parents use and exploit their children to meet their own needs. While we often hear about the child that is a scapegoat or the narcissist golden child, less often though do we hear about the lost child. In today's video, we're going to discuss 3 signs that you may have been the lost child in your dysfunctional family system. Well, who is the lost child? So kind of like the name states, the lost child is the child that nobody pays attention to. They most likely are not going to receive any blame, but they're also not going to receive any praise. Their basic needs are going to be ignored as if they do not exist. So sign number 1 essentially is that you feel lost. This translates to a feeling that something is fundamentally missing from your life, and this actually is correct. There may be a sense of immense emptiness, and this is the void that your parents should have filled. It is important to understand that if you were the lost child, you did not do anything to be put in that position, so it is important not to blame yourself. Narcissistic parents are emotionally immature and they force children into various roles. These roles may even change over time, right? Sometimes you may be the lost child, and at other times your family may also make you the scapegoat. Being placed in these roles is a very traumatic experience. However, with enough time and patience, you can heal yourself by learning how to adequately love and nourish yourself. And with that covered, let's go ahead and jump into sign number 2. And that is you may have picked up destructive or addiction-like behaviors. So first up, understand that narcissists themselves are addicts. They are people addicts. So sometimes you may hear me refer to them as energy vampires, right? They need your energy. They need to consume your energy. This addictive-like nature of your family system most likely transfer to you. And what I mean by this is if you grew up feeling uncared for and unloved, you may use self-destructive behavior to cope. So what is an example of self-destructive behavior? So you may have issues with depression. And what is depression? Depression is anger turned inwards. Other people may turn to alcohol and other drugs to cope. And what again is going to happen? You're consuming alcohol again to cope with that loss. And the loss that we're talking about here is the lack of love from your family system. So now as an adult, even though it was not your fault that you were born to a dysfunctional family system, you now have to take the responsibility to love yourself and to take care of yourself. You hear me say often on this channel that pathological narcissists are people that are rooted in shame and are unable to move past their pride. This is the emotional immaturity that I mentioned before. So if you had emotionally immature parents, then you're going to have issues regulating these negative emotions. So depression is anger turned inwards. You may also have issues dealing with shame or letting go of shame. And shame here translates to low self-esteem and low self-confidence. If you grew up in a narcissistic, dysfunctional family system, then you inherited a lot of trauma. So if you had a parent that had anger issues, then you may also have anger issues. If you had a parent that had issues dealing with shame, regulating their fear and so on, you most likely internalized those negative emotions. And let's go ahead and wrap it up with sign number 3, that you are most likely the lost child in your dysfunctional family system. And sign number 3 is that you most likely attracted and accepted people that made you feel like members of your dysfunctional family system. And what I mean by this is if you grew up in this type of dysfunctional family system at an energetic level, at a subconscious level, you're going to attract people that remind you of your family. It is much easier to recreate what you know. So regardless of the amount of pain that you felt growing up in that dysfunctional family system, it is much easier to recreate what you know than step into the unknown. Fear of the unknown is an actual thing, right? It's actually called xenophobia. In modern usage of the word xenophobia, it has evolved to mean fear of strangers or foreigners. However, the original meaning is much broader, and it actually meant fear of anyone or anything that is unfamiliar or unknown. Essentially, what we're talking about here is a fear of a different vibration. Emotionally immature people exist in a fear-based state, in a fear-based consciousness. I mentioned before that pathological narcissists are shame-based people who are unable to move past their pride. This is what we call the third dimension. We may also call this victim abuser consciousness. If you got entangled with a pathological narcissist, then in that relationship you were the victim and they would have been the abuser. And this is what I mean when I said that you may have attracted and accepted people that had the same energetic frequency of your narcissistic parents or caregivers. What you are familiar with is victim abuser consciousness. You are familiar with the energetic frequency of shame-based thinking up to pride. You are familiar with this contracted state of awareness. What you are unfamiliar with, the unknown then, would be the fourth dimension and higher. This is why in order to leave a narcissistic abusive relationship, you must get the courage to walk away and stay away. It's a completely different vibration. Now let's go ahead and tie this all together. So if you grew up the scapegoat or the lost child in this narcissistic dysfunctional family system, you most likely ended up like the enabling parent. This is the energetic frequency that you adopted. You ended up codependent. You ended up a people pleaser. As a child, you were vying for your parents' love because it was not freely given. So as an adult, you will have codependent tendencies. And as a people pleaser, you most likely attracted a narcissistic person that is all about themselves, a self-pleasing person. You actually recreated this dysfunctional family structure. So if you were the victim in a narcissistic relationship, then you most likely downplayed and made excuses for your spouse's abusive behavior. This is what I mean when I say that you most likely ended up very similar to the enabling parent. All of this really boils down to the fact that people that grew up feeling unloved and uncared for may also attract people who treat them the same way. This is really you attracting what you are familiar with. A really good book to understand this dynamic is The Human Magnet Syndrome, The Codependent Narcissist Trap by Dr. Ross Rosenberg. And I also talk about this in various degrees here on this channel, so please ensure that you are subscribed to get this life-saving information. And as always, please go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. Go ahead and save the videos. And if you have any comments, questions, or feedback, please go ahead and leave a comment. See you in the next video.